name Murdered Before Wedding. This novel is mostly fiction inspired on true events that may happen to somebody. Names, characters, places, incidents, either product of imagination or being changed. Any resemblance just a coincidence. Please consider this book as a sci-fi. Sometimes this novel has third-party content, constitute fair use. Works are meant to be educational, scholar in nature. Chapter 1. Audrey Thompson. Audrey Thompson was born in Summerlin, Missouri in December 1982. She had one brother named Jim, and the two of them very close. Growing up, throughout their lives, Audrey was a very spunky, outgoing person. She had a lot of passion for life and everything that she did. Audrey's loved one described her as someone who is as always bubbly as she is. She was her own unique personality, and she wasn't afraid to let her personality shine. Despite that, Audrey had Asperger's syndrome, and she was functioning savant and genius. She was never something that held her back in any way. There is always something that gave her a different type of passion for life. Audrey was an amazing person, amazing friend. She never molded herself into fit with others. She actually preferred to stand out from the crowd. One of the Audrey's many passions was her YouTube channel that she loved so much, and she loved doing general vlog, and she called it a weekly vlog, and where she would share a lot of her personal life, her thoughts, her talents, and her hobbies. Quote, "Hello, my dear subscribers. I figured um, I would just kind of give a little bit of background on me so you kind of get to know me well." She was writing on YouTube channel. So I am 34 years old. I work in education right now. I have 2 degrees in psychology and a bachelor's degree and master's, and I'm working on third degree, second master's in counseling. And I'm very much a huge geek, but I hate being just a cold nerd. I'm a huge fan of things like Marvel and Disney. Audrey told her fans on a YouTube channel. Audrey was a total geek and proud of it. She loved video games, making costumes, making props for her cosplay. She also loved animals, and she had 5 cats. And she really enjoyed reading and singing. But what Audrey really loved was nail polish and nail art. She actually started her own nail polishing business at one point. She called it Shiny Sparks. Audrey first got into nail polish business as a hobby, and then she met some other women online who liked making nail polishing as well, and they became community. Then she decided to order the materials that she would need to order to make her own nail polishes, just kind of let her creativity run with it. Another reason why she was inspired to start her own nail polish business is because traditional nail polish is very expensive and it can be extremely overpriced, and Audrey had the lower prices that popular brands did. The name of her company was inspired by 2 things. First, her love of sparkly things, and second, it was actually like maneuver in her favorite video game. And that maneuver called Shine Spark. So Audrey thought it was perfect name for her brand. She loved to match nail polish to whatever colors she was wearing that day. Audrey's 2 favorite colors were pink and green. Her favorite place to travel was Florida, because she loved going to Disney and Harry Potter's world. Also, Audrey was also incredibly smart. She had 2 psychology degrees and a bachelor, and was eventually going to go back to get her second master's. So she clearly was very, very intelligent. In her early 20s, Audrey first got married to her first husband. However, the relationship actually ended in 2 years. They end up getting into divorce, but during the divorce process, Audrey ended up finding out that she was pregnant with the son. During her pregnancy, Audrey actually reconnected with one woman named Sandy, and who she went to kindergarten with. That funny that 2 of them actually remembered not liking each other back then and when they were growing up, but something changed, and they were very fond of each other as adults. So fond of each other, so they began falling in love with each other, as Sandy ended up helping Audrey raising her son, who they named Bilan. Bilan was born with cerebral palsy, and the first few years of the relationship was great. It was very loving and happy. However, while she and Sandy were dating, Audrey ended up getting a job in a soberly corrections center, and she seems to be really happy with this job. However, a lot of this happiness may be from come from someone new at work. There was Evans Dandy comes in a picture. Chapter Evans Dandy. Evans Dandy was a lieutenant officer at Soberly Correctional, and he spent many years working there way before Audrey. Audrey and Evans instantly made a connection, and so while they were starting their relationship, Audrey is still in a relationship with Sandy. Sandy had no idea that this is what was going on, and one time Audrey and Evans were actually at motel together hooking up. Sandy went there and caught them. She literally tracked them down using tracking app installed on her phone, and Sandy goes up into a motel door, knocks on it, and Audrey answers while Evans was in the background getting dressed up and leaving. So obviously this was when Audrey and Sandy break up, and Sandy wasn't happy about it. Cheating wasn't really in Audrey's character normally, but there was something about Evans that just drew her into him. So it wasn't long enough until the two of them started officially dating. Evans was older than Audrey, about 16 years older. He was born on July 4th, 1965 in Missouri. Evans entered the Marine Corps as a teenager and had been married several times before he met Audrey. When Evans and Audrey became official, he told her that he was married, but he and his wife were in the middle of divorce proceedings. Evans claimed that the process was just taking long, which sometimes divorce can take years and years. One of the main reasons it was taking so long was because they had two children involved, a son and a daughter of their own. So Audrey's family was a little bit suspicious about their relationship from the start. All they knew about Evans was that Audrey had met him at work and that she was madly in love with him. Everyone who saw the two of them together noted that they seemed very into each other, especially Audrey, who she was smitten by him. People said they had never seen her so happy in love with someone before. However, Audrey's family was concerned about their relationship and they were very just unsure about Evans, especially her brother Jim, who right away said Evans was a con man who just using his sister for her money. In fact, Audrey was paying for everything they did together. Family members describe Evans as being a kind of host, like he wouldn't look at people in the eye when talking to them. His personality wasn't just so different from Audrey's. Jim definitely had his concerns, but he felt like it wasn't his place to intervene because his sister was so happy at the time. So Audrey and Evans dated for 7 years, and then finally in October 2017, Evans told Audrey that his divorce is final and they can get married. Audrey took his opportunity to ask the love of her life to marry her. Evans said yes, and Audrey was over the moon excited to plan her wedding. It was something she had always dreamed about her entire life. She even hired a wedding planner to make sure that the day was absolutely perfect. Audrey wanted to be absolutely perfect down to every little detail. She was highly involved in the whole process. She even had two wedding dresses because she couldn't decide on one, and Audrey was really excited for the wedding that was coming up in 2018. But on Christmas of 2017, tragedy struck. Evans' first wife, Mallory, who had just got divorced apparently, had gotten into a very serious car accident and was being put on a life support. Evans told Audrey that Mallory was still alive but in a really, really bad condition. Even though this horrific accident had happened and Mallory was still on life support, they decided to continue with the weddings because they had a date set up already for the wedding. It was going to be on April 29, 2019. The reception venue was booked, things were moving forward, but Audrey understood that this was kind of really hard time for Evans, especially for his kids. Evans was trying to support his kids as the mother was on life support, but everything seems to be in place for the big day that was coming up in April. However, just a week before the wedding, tragedy struck again, and Evans told Audrey that Mallory had unfortunately passed away due to her injuries from the car accident. So now it's just days before the wedding, and Evans has to comfort the kids and plan the funeral for his ex-wife. They kind of threw the whole idea around the canceling the wedding, but nevertheless, Evans was able to pull it together and told Audrey that he still wanted to move forward with the wedding anyway. So that week, Evans and Audrey went to the county recorder of deeds and got the marriage license. As far as Audrey knew, she was gonna get married in just a few days. The process of getting marriage license isn't long, but it does require a couple to bring a valid form of identification and the social security cards. So they must also sign documentation, including one that states they're not currently married and that statements have provided a truth under penalty of perjury. However, the man who was helping them with their marriage license actually felt unsettled with Evans. He felt like something was off, particularly when he had asked Evans if he had been married before. Evans' reaction was really weird. He seemed kind of rattled by question and asked, "Why do you need to know if I'm married or not?" In fact, Evans had been married 4 times before, but regardless of him acting weird about this question, they proceeded with getting their marriage license anyway. So he and Audrey left the day on April 25th, their marriage license in hand, but things took a very different turn on April 27th, 2018. Chapter Audrey's body found. Only 2 days after getting the marriage license, 2 days before the wedding, a man named Ben was driving to his mother's house on April 27th to drop off his daughter. He was so tired and he drove through a shortcut that led through the intersection of the road and Highway 151. It was very common for him to take the shortcut. He had done it many times before, but right through the dirt road, it was pretty desolate area. It wasn't uncommon for people to drive through that from time to time. So on this way to drop off his daughter, he saw that appeared to be two vehicles. At first, he didn't think too much. However, stopped, he spoke to the man he identified being white and older in age. Ben was just passing by and asked man if he needed help with something, and man seemed to think everything was fine. He continued on his way only 30 minutes later. Around 10 p.m., Ben dropped off his daughter. Then he drove back through the grove, and when he noticed this time there was only one car. However, he noticed more than that. He also noticed there was a body just lying on the ground. Ben knew immediately that there was something very wrong. He thought this person could be deceased, and right away he calls 911. A 911 operator encouraged Ben to get out of the car and try to see if the person was still alive. When police arrived at the scene, they began working on identifying this person, and after running the vehicle registration, they were able to determine that body was belonging to Audrey Thompson, the bride-to-be. From the initial reports, they thought Audrey had been struck by the back end of her head, and there was some type of blunt force trauma that killed her. Police knew right away that this was a horrible homicide, but once they were able to look further into her injuries, they actually discovered that she has been shot. Once execution style in the back of her head, and police thought maybe this could have some robbery, but they were quickly ruled out that version because she was wearing her expensive engagement ring. And they searched her car for any clues that they will find her marriage license sitting on the passenger seat. So after hours of collecting evidence, a handful of officers looked up Evans' dandy address and went to his house to deliver the notification of death. By the time they got to residence of Santa Fe, it was just about 2:30 a.m. Obviously, giving someone who just about to get married notifications that they passed away was extremely difficult. When police got to the house and knocked on the door, they were very surprised to see Mallory at the door, Evans' wife of 23 years, who still was very much alive, and she was just as confused as they were. Mallory remembers they were asking who she was at her own home because she thought this was the house of Audrey Thompson's fiance. So once police kind of clarified who Mallory actually was to Evans, they brought Evans and Mallory into for questioning. At first, Mallory was really confused. She actually thought that one of Evans' co-workers had died, and Mallory couldn't quite understand what was going on. She didn't fully grasp who this person um, was actually listed as Evans' fiance on the marriage license. Evans had always told Mallory that he had zero tolerance for anyone who cheated, but just thought it was the worst things he could possibly do. So Mallory was asked if she knew Audrey, and she said no. Eventually, police explained to Evans' wife Mallory who Audrey was, and she was so confused. Mallory went into total shock. She said her husband had been sleeping at home every single night. He always been with her at the end of the day. He never seems to be unhappy in the marriage. When it suddenly dawned on her that oftentimes he would get off work at 3, but he wouldn't be home until 5. Every time she would bring that up, it would always end up an argument they were never got really anywhere. Mallory has never really figured out where Evans was and what would taken him so long to get home, but she never thought it was cheating because Evans was so adamant to, and she hated cheaters big time. Chapter Evans' weird acting. So police asked Mallory if Evans had any weird behavior that day, and she said no. He was home. He seems completely normal. All she did was that evening he went out with a coworker and she didn't think much of it. Mallory went to bed before Evans got home, so in the early hours, April 28th, the day before Evans and Audrey are surprised to get married, Mallory was driving a dig up evidence that her husband had been having this relationship. She went to the basement where he kept a lot of his stuff, a lot of his tools. She thought it was perfect place to hide any evidence. Then she goes up in the attic, thinking maybe it's possible that he have some evidence there. And she did find several boxes having Audrey's name on them. Turned out that those boxes, many of them, boxes has Audrey's belonging, been stored in a home without Mallory's actual knowledge. Then she came across a locked chest, and she was able to open it, and she did uncover photos of albums, Evans documenting their 7-year relationship. There were photos of trips. Two of them had gone to places like Florida and Mexico. Mallory remembered that Evans took those trips each time with a different story about it. Evans told his wife he was going to Florida for sniper's training for work. Then he was invited by some male friends to go to Mexico. However, Mallory actually was one of the ones who encouraged him to take a trip to Mexico with his friends, and realized only now that he was actually been there with the mistress, Audrey Thompson. And if that wasn't worth of it, it turns out Evans had taken Mallory on a trip to Mexico as well, to the same spot just months later. Evans did it all again with Mallory, acted like everything was fine, obviously. Mallory's daughter was still living in the home at the time, and she was kind of had to put on a brave face for her. But she was so devastated and so confused and so heartbroken. So next day, there was her daughter junior prom, and she didn't want to spoil it at all. However, when her daughter came down on the morning of April 28th, she knew something was wrong. She knew that something was up with her mom right away, and her grandparents were there, which was surprising to the child. So they ended up explaining to her that father was taken for custody by police, for questioning by police, and they didn't explain it until the prom date. Obviously, such a shocking way to find out her father had been cheating on her mother for one, but also considered as a suspect in his mistress murder. That was especially striking to her, and she recognized Audrey Thompson she had met before. So the daughter Ella was going to be Comic Con with some friends, and she needed a costume, and her father tells her, quote, "I know someone who makes costumes." So Evans literally drove his daughter Ella over to Audrey's house one day, and two of them sat down and talked about what she wanted for her costume to look like. Ella had no idea she was actually meeting her father's girlfriend, so obviously police wanted to question Ella as well when they found out that she had actually already met Audrey and she had some point of information regarding her father